Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. We are welcoming Fern Basinski and Melinda Robb. They are
with the House of Hope, all under the auspices of Pregnancy Choices. Good morning.
Good morning, Susie.
House of Hope.
Yes.
That sounds very hopeful. So, Fern, tell me, what is the House of Hope? What are you about?
Well, the House of Hope is a very safe and confidential place that is not advertised, and we conduct healing Bible studies at the House of Hope. We cover post-abortion recovery healing. We cover retreat, which is any other kind of grief besides abortion, and unbound, which is healing from your sexual past. We're currently doing 6 groups, and it's just buzzing, and it's wonderful, and women are being healed.
I'm just so interested that you said 2 things so interesting there. 6 groups, and we basically don't advertise anything. How do people find out about you and come to you?
Well, some of them are volunteers that come through the volunteer training and realize that they need some help. We've also had staff people go through our groups who need help, and we do speak at churches, and when we do any kind of speaking, we always mention our reconciliation groups.
And you also mentioned a couple of titles. I know sometimes when we work so closely with something and it's so close to us that we tend to forget that somebody not involved might not understand what you're saying there. So you said something about Unbound, help from your sexual past. Let's talk about that one. What would be the Unbound group? What are we really talking about there?
Well, the Unbound group, it can be a mode of healing for women who are stuck somewhere in their past, even going all the way back to childhood, from any kind of traumatic sexual experience. It would appeal to women who have been promiscuous and now finding themselves not being able to be intimate in their current marriage because of some bondages that are still hanging on, places where they might be stuck. And so they need to be unbound. They need to break the bonds of the sexual past and be free to find their true intimacy in Christ and with their marriage partner.
I think it would be very difficult to enter into a marriage and feel completely free to give yourself completely to another person when thoughts of close touching would make your flesh crawl because of something in the past. Is that what we're talking about?
Absolutely.
Yes. And you're able to free somebody from that so that they can really be 100% all in for their husband or wife.
Well, it's a good start, Susie. It's a great place for them to start. It's a 13-week Bible study, very in-depth, and it's step by step. It's uncovering layer by layer. And sometimes, yes, women need to go further with maybe some professional help, depending on how deep their trauma is. But it is a great, great beginning, and some women actually do come through really healed and ready to move on in their lives.
Can you give us, without saying names, no naming names, but can you give us some examples of some turning around that you've gotten to see through these Bible studies?
Through the Unbound specifically?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I've seen, well, we actually had some girls go through who were currently cohabitating, and they were just so healed and so free that now they wanted to get married. And we've had several women actually get married while they were going through the Bible study. We've had women who have shared their traumatic childhood experiences for the first time within the group. And I personally did a group of 12 women, and we literally, in the spirit realm, heard the chains begin to fall off of women. It was amazing.
Well, Unbound is just one of the books that you use, one of the Bible study books. What else do you offer?
We offer portraits.
And what is portraits?
Portraits is a post-abortion, after abortion recovery for women who are suffering the pain, the feelings of shame and regret from a past abortion. They may say that they know God forgives them, but they can't forgive themselves, and so they're stuck there. And their abortion may have been 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they are still carrying around all the shame and guilt, or it may have been a month ago, and they're really hurting and need someone to help them stop the bleeding.
You know, pastors are listening right now, and they're saying, well, not in my congregation. What do we know, really, about when you gather church women together? We've got people hurting in there, don't we?
Yes, we do. I was one of those women. I sat in church from 1981 till 1998, terrified that somebody was going to find out that I had had an abortion. And so I know what that's like. I was afraid to get involved in ministry because somebody might find out, or I wasn't really worthy to be someone that could help someone else in ministry. And so, yes, they are sitting in the churches because 43%, statistically, 43% of women have had an abortion. And so they say they break that out in the general population. It's about 1 in 4. And within the church, it could be as high as 1 in 6 women are sitting there in pain.
But we're told, Fern, that is the answer for all your problems and that you will feel free when it's over and that it's all about women's reproductive rights. What would you answer?
I would say from past experience that no woman ever walks away from an abortion unscathed. That she is going to walk away with some kind of trauma. And she may not feel it right away because sometimes the first thing they feel is relief. I did. But that relief doesn't last long. And when that starts to wear off, if we can't bear the pain and we can't look at it, we begin to turn to our coping mechanisms. And we look for other ways to relieve that, unhealthy ways to relieve that pain.
What do you do in portraits? First of all, acknowledge that you are not alone. And then where do you take these women from that point?
Well, we take them to, first of all, they have to revisit their experience because if it's been many, many years ago, they've buried or denied so much. So they need to go back there and they need to rip that Band-Aid off and allow God to really get to the wound and really help them discover how they made that decision and how they felt about the decision and who was involved, and to know that they didn't make that decision in a vacuum, that there were influences in that decision, even that the fact that it was legal. It influences many of our decisions. And so then we have to look at God and we have to determine, do we have a faulty image of God? Do we have misconceptions about God that need to be dismantled? For instance, many women who are post-abortive will think God's out to get them, or God's going to punish me now. I'll never be able to have another baby. Or I'll have a handicapped child. So we have to dismantle the lies and really build a foundation of who God truly is, that he is compassionate, that he is loving, that he is forgiving, and he does care about my pain.
And like we did with the Unbound group, can you talk a little bit about some of the people who've come through portraits and some of the healing you've gotten to see?
Well, Portraits is one of my favorite groups because that is a group that, first of all, we focus totally on nothing but the abortion and the pain and the anger and the shame that goes with it. So it's a very focused group. And so many women, by the time we get through their anger, help them work through their anger, and then move them into forgiveness and help them understand that God's forgiveness is enough and that actually scripturally they can't forgive themselves because it's not scriptural. It's nowhere in the Bible. And help them to know that receiving Christ's forgiveness is enough, that what he did on the cross was enough, is life-changing for most women. And then the dignity of life service, where they actually get to honor their baby, is life-transforming. It was for me, and it's been for every woman that has gone through our groups.
What is that?
The dignity of life. The dignity of life is where we just spend the whole evening honoring our children, lighting a candle, talking about our children, talking about where they are now, talking about will we see them again in heaven, and just really reconnecting with those babies because those babies were taken from them and they had already started the bond with those babies at conception, and so now they need to reconnect, and that's something they have never allowed themselves to do. They've never given themselves permission to even think about those babies. And that's why they're stuck in their grief, because they've never really grieved in a healthy way and reconnected with their babies.
Wow.
We don't feel like we have a right to grieve our babies because we made that decision. And the enemy is right there telling us, well, you have no right. In my situation, he went so far to convince me for years that I couldn't be pro-life because I had an abortion. And I don't think I'm the only one that's thought that way, you know.
Someone said to me one time, it almost takes an arrogance to think that we have sinned so far beyond God's ability to forgive us. Who do we think we are that we're that one? We're that one, oh, he can do a lot of things, but he can't forgive me. Right. And you would say that's almost the way that you were feeling.
Yes, and until I came through the study and my eyes were open to, oh my goodness, the lies that I was believing and accepting as truth was just, it was life-changing, like Fern said.
The weight of that being lifted, can you begin to describe it?
Well, it's very, I have a zeal for the Lord that I didn't have before. I understand the passion. And I got, when I came through and I got through just about the anger part is when I realized that I wanted to facilitate these groups to help other women understand that I wasn't the only one feeling this way. I know there's other women thinking, well, this is as good as it gets. I'm never going to feel any better than this. And it's just, it's the difference between, I called myself the walking dead before because I just wasn't alive to Christ like I am now that I've been healed.
People who know the two of you would think, oh my gosh, it is always such a joy to be around you. You have, that's something that makes a person feel like they're being embraced, that warmth. You're just real easy to hang out with. And, I think they would be stunned to know that you ever felt differently. Yeah. Do you hear that?
A lot, because that is what the healing brings, that freedom and that love. And we care so much about the post-abortive women, all women, but especially the ones that are living with that secret, which with 43% of women being post-abortive, it's not really that big of a secret, but it is to us. We think we're the only ones. So it's just, we hear that a lot, don't we, Fern? That how can it be,
Yeah. There's other kinds of grief besides having had maybe a rough past or maybe have gone through an abortion. There's other kinds of loss. And you even have groups that address this. Talk about that.
Okay. Well, many times women feel that when we mention the word grief, they automatically think of losing a loved one to death. And grief just encompasses so many other situations, which we've found out through these groups, because we can tell you at least, I would say, 25 different types of grief that women have come with. I'll just mention a few. The divorce of a parent. I mean, they're adults now, but they are still stuck and hurting over the divorce of their parents when they were a child. We had several women come through who have lost the dream of marriage and having children, especially the children, because they're past the age of childbearing, but there's no partner in sight and there's no children, so they've lost that dream. We've had women come through who had been abused 20 years ago in a marriage and was still stuck and never worked through that particular abuse. We've had financial loss. We've had a woman come through with the loss of her health. She almost died, and this was many years ago, and she still was stuck feeling that she was dying. So, Melinda, I think you can name a few more because you've been through this quite a few times.
Incarceration of a loved one.
Oh, my.
And, our children sometimes take the wrong path, and that's painful to us.
So there's lots and lots. I'm thinking even pets. Sometimes that can just be.
We did have a pet.
And you feel almost silly about feeling so bad about it. But... and I'm thinking a miscarriage sometimes, and you're not allowed to have a funeral when you have a miscarriage. You're just supposed to go to the hospital and then come home and move on. You're not even allowed to grieve for some of these things, are you?
That's right.
And that's what you're finding.
That's what we're finding, and we're finding this group is really has a waiting list. Because everyone has something that they want to work through.
What's this one called?
This is called Refuge.
All right.
We have several women who are actually going through again. They finish and they say, that was great, but now I have this other issue that I really never grieved. I'd like to go through again, and that's exciting.
Sure. So you go through the same refuge, but you focus on one loss at a time.
That's right.
Not just, hi, I'm a hot mess.
No.
Okay.
one issue at a time.
Okay. This is great. We are talking with Fern Basinski and Melinda Robb, and we will be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.